So then, good evening, good evening. Yes. So just to continue from the last evening, now having taken on the person as your spiritual guide, then how does one in terms of the spiritual guide giving advice and so forth, then how much does one have to attend to the advices, to the teachings, or to the something like the wishes, to the wishes of the teacher? How much? Because if we are not careful, then we might be under the impression that having taken on the person, having taken on a spiritual guide, that we are obliged to do whatever the spiritual guide tells us, So this is one thing that is how one approaches this. This is made clearly actually in the 50 verses itself. It's verse 24-25. The wise should strive to listen to what the Guru orders with a happy mind. If one is not reasonably able to do it, explain that one is unable. Explain that one is unable. From the Guru comes accomplishments. From the Guru comes, anyhow, verse 24, this then gives clear instructions, and Rinpoche elaborates by saying that the wise, very intelligent disciples make great effort to listen to and carry out the orders of their Guru. This is done, moreover, not with reluctance, but with an extremely happy, rejoicing mind. One might ask, does one have to carry out every order? The answer is that if, after trying as hard as one can, one is not able to carry out a command that is in accord with Dharma, one does not incur a fault, right? So if the Guru says something and asks you to do something that does not accord with the Dharma, then you can simply, you don't have to carry out that wish. And by doing so, in no way would you incur, in no way does that incur a fault, something like breakage of the samaya, Even if one does not do it, one explains politely and clearly the reason one was unable to carry out the command and excuses oneself. And if the work cannot be carried out within the bounds of reason, if it is an improper and irreligious command, one should excuse oneself politely as above and not engage in it. And then Rinpoche further comments, thus if one is pressed and exhorted to do something such as an action that contradicts what is proscribed in the 3 sets of vows, do not engage in it. It is nevertheless wrong to take that as a reason for not having faith, or for saying that the Guru has faults, etc. So, if we find ourselves in this situation where the Guru tells us to carry out actions that would go against ethics, that would go against the basic principles of Dharma, then one should. It is advised that one should actually not carry out those wishes. So then Rinpoche says, despite that, still, because the Guru says something that does not accord with the Dharma, and thereby you are not carrying out that wish, that does not mean that one should lose faith in the Guru. That does not mean that one should hold the Guru responsible negatively, right? So this second part, I find it interesting, you know. So with the first part, it says that we should make that decision not to carry out the order of the Guru if it does not accord with the Dharma. We are at this, we have our freedom to reject that. But at the same time, we should not lose faith in the Guru, right? So this part might be somewhat challenging, you know. Of course, luckily, I hope that that we don't have anyone here in the group that has been in this situation. But if there is someone here who is in this situation and does not feel comfortable verbalizing the situation, then I think we have to be reasonable. No one has to be reasonable. So we have to think about what the spiritual guide has said or has done, right? And if this is something that not only does not accord with the Dharma, but it also does not accord with, that it breaks the boundaries of universal ethics, and that it can be harmful, you know, those actions or following those wishes, if they are detrimental, if they are harmful, then I feel that it is important that one should at least, you know, raise these issues, you know, raise these issues. This is important. As His Holiness said, that when spiritual guides, when they make mistakes, especially here now referring to abuse, you know, when they abuse their students, then of course, because one has already established this guru-disciple relationship with the said person, if it is possible to, I don't know if it would be possible not to lose faith in that situation, but try to not have one has to really walk this fine line, right? So not losing faith, but at the same time one has to make others aware that this person is unethical in action, right? This need to be made clear so that others will not fall trap, so that others will not fall trap to this kind of behavior, will not be subjected to this kind of behavior. So I think this needs to be made clear, just like His Holiness had mentioned. This is one thing. And then one reason why I don't want to go through each of these verses is that much of these verses is self-explanatory. It's quite clear. It's very clear. So if I spend the next few hours elaborating and just giving word commentaries to those, then I think this is really unnecessary. But rather, I would like to take this opportunity and then talk about really the difficult part, or the difficult situations that may arise out of this relationship, So this is why I've been talking about it yesterday, and I would also like to continue and hear your thoughts. I feel that yesterday I think we did 3 questions? Was it?
Yeah.
Yes, I think.
With 1 person, 2 questions.
Yes. So we could only hear the views of 3 persons yesterday. So, but today I think it would be nice, just to get those of you who would like to share anything, whether it's an opinion or a view or maybe a question, could you please raise your hand so that I would know how to divide. Yeah, so if you are interested, then please could you raise your hands? We have 1, 2, okay, 2, 3, yes. This is almost like an auction house. Yes, okay, we have 3. Is that it?
And if upstairs has, Lillian, you can let us know.
Okay, upstairs. Okay, 4, very good. So we have 4 here, and I hope there will be more from here and also from upstairs as well. Yes, so, okay. And yes, yesterday, I think there was one question about the numbers of teachers, about the numbers of teachers. This is a very good question. So here I feel I cannot say to you what would be the ideal number, right? Because when I look at myself, then sometimes I have to fight with myself, when it comes to the number of gurus, right? Personally, I'm fine with the idea of having 1 teacher, having 1 spiritual guide. And when I say spiritual guide, I don't mean a spiritual guide. I mean a spiritual guide that you are close with, you are close with. Not just in mind, but physically, in close proximity. I think there is something special about that, When you have a guru, and you see the guru maybe once or twice a year, and the setting is that there are hundreds or even thousands. Yeah? And you only get to be in the group for maybe 1 or 2 hours, 3 hours, if you're really lucky, you know, if you only get that much amount of time, and then after that, you go back, right? What do you think of that? What do you think of that situation, right? Sure, how wonderful that you were able to meet this great spiritual guide, this great Lama, great Guru, and having this wonderful opportunity along with everyone. How wonderful, right? But then there are certain advantages of having a spiritual guide in where you can establish a personal relationship. You know, there are definitely great advantages in that. That way, you can get to know the Guru, and the Guru also gets to know you conventionally. Okay, let's not talk about the omniscient mind. You know, that's out of the scope of my talk right now. So conventionally, the Guru knows you, and you know the Guru. And with this relationship, then I think the trust can come, you know, the trust. And this is the trust out of really knowing the person, out of establishing this personal bond with the Guru. And that trust is I think, so special. And so this is why I feel that it's really, if you are fortunate enough, if we are fortunate enough to have a spiritual guide and have this kind of relationship, then what more do we need, you know? Because any questions we have, any doubts we have, our Guru is always there, right? And you can ask the questions, and the Guru guides you in how to do, practical things. Not just give you an oral transmission or a commentary or initiations, things like that, but personal instructions, personal instructions guide you, for example, in how to do the fire puja, right? So that you don't have to read some manual or just almost sort of like ask someone who might only know the ritual aspect, right? But if you ask your spiritual guide those, then I think many of us, we have this wonderful opportunity to receive the initiations, and if we are even more fortunate, then we can receive the commentary from the same Guru from whom we have received the initiation. But then, how many of us can claim or have had the wonderful opportunity to not only receive the initiation, not only receive the relevant commentary, but also have received personal instructions on how to do the retreat from the same Lama? Yeah? How many of us? So this is what I meant, that if we have a spiritual Guru, that we can relate on all, that we can relate and then seek their advice in all these different aspects of our practice, then why do we need, then that would, why do we need another guru, right? Why would we need to add on our list, you know? So, if we are fortunate enough to be in this situation, then you really have to decide. You really have to think for yourself. Do I really need to add? Do I really need to have so many gurus, you know? Instead of having all these short opportunities with many gurus, I think it would be better to have many opportunities with one guru, you know? So, if we are, but this is of course what you call placement, right? You have to be in that situation. If one is not in that situation, then it is difficult, right? If one is not in that situation, then what do you have to do? Then I think then maybe you have to decide which way works best for you, no? Which way works best for you, right? So, like this. We have a great collection of practices. There are so many wangs, so many lungs, so many menga, right? These three. Initiations, transmissions, and special instructions. We have a great collection of those. As with that expression, jack of all trades, but master of none, right? Right? So, what would you be? A jack of all trades or master of one? So I think this is where perhaps the answer lies, right? And with this kind of question, then again, what brings, I think, relevance to this is really the question of why we are seeking a spiritual guide in the first place. The question of why we are seeking a spiritual guide, which ties closely with what we are seeking. What is our goal, right? This fundamental question, the fundamental goal. So we have to go back to the basics, to the fundamental teachings of the Buddha. So we have to ask these questions to ourselves. I think, repeatedly we have to ask this again and again and remind ourselves of our goal in establishing a guru-disciple relationship. So, to check our motivation, to do a reality check, I think this is important, yeah. Okay, so at this point, maybe, yes, we can start. Yes, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for sharing what you have shared. I can't thank you for the teachings because there's really none now.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been contemplating what you have said yesterday about the definition of guru devotion. Okay. I've been thinking, what sort of mind is this guru devotion? Devotion to the guru. You mentioned that in Tibetan, devotion is not a term there. It's about reliance on a guru. So I've been thinking, so guru devotion, maybe it means that it's a mind of reliance. And if it's a mind of reliance, it seems to me it's like a mind of dependence, a mind that depends, just like a child depends on the mother. That's what I'm thinking. What is this mind, this guru devotion mind? And then, coming from there, how do we distinguish guru devotion from attachment? So, just like a child, when he's very devoted to the mother, I feel when he's very young, when the mother is not in sight, he will cry, right? And that is a sign of attachment to the mother. But maybe as he grows older, it can mean that he's still devoted to the mother, but when the mother is not around, he knows that he has not lost her. So in that sense, maybe there's no attachment in a sense. I'm not very sure about that. So my question really is about how to distinguish these two. Guru devotion, what kind of mind is guru devotion? I believe it should be a positive mind. And attachment, as we all know, is an afflicted mind, so it disturbs the mind. So devotion, to me, should not be a disturbing mind. So I'm trying to distinguish these two. And if Rinpoche can share also, like, what are the signs for us to find out, to learn about ourselves, that what we have inside us, is it guru devotion or is it attachment to our teacher? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's related? Okay.
Rinpoche, you say that it's good to have a guru that you can is nearby you, but if one were to be like have a guru for a long period of time, and there will be times when, like at the initial period, one did develop a closer relationship because one was very new, and the guru seems to manifest, to appear to be close, but as one become like an older student, one does sometimes find that the physical contact with the guru is like getting less, and because like the guru might have other new disciples to come in. So there are times where, like after some time, you seem to feel like the guru is like physically further and further away from you. So at the point in time, there are times that some student might then develop certain, due to attachment or develop doubts, like whether one has done anything wrong.
What was your question? I think could you summarize, please?
Okay, it's like, is it necessary that after one has been long time in a guru disciple relationship, that one necessary to have a guru that is really nearby, or as one become more mature, one might be not in close contact with a guru, and however one can develop devotion to the guru in terms of the heart, but then the physical context and interaction of the guru can be lessened.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so I think I will try to answer your question first. So you're right. Yes, after having established this guru devotion, together with having established a personal relationship, then there might be a time when one is one may not be nearby, right? So at that time, then I think, unless you find it is necessary to now have a new guru, to search for another guru, then I think you have to see for yourself whether having had that close relationship with your guru, whether that can inspire you in your practice, whether you can channel that to your practice, If you can do that, then I think you are good. But because now you're not in close proximity anymore, and if one feels that it is necessary to be in close proximity with the present guru, and if you see the opportunity to establish this kind of relationship with another guru who is nearby now, then I think if you think that you would need this kind of, you would need your guru to be in close proximity, right? If you feel like that, then I think you could also do it like that. But then again, we have to, when we say close proximity, then again, when we think of our gurus, and we have to really think about. Sometimes I feel that we have to, there will come a point when we have to say, okay, maybe enough teachings for now, Maybe I can stop going to all the teachings now. Now maybe I have to practice. Maybe it is time for me to practice. Maybe it is time for me to really put my guru's guidance, my guru's teachings into practice. So if you feel like that, then that is, I think, really the best thing, Not to add to the arsenal of, teachings and all these different lineages whatsoever, whatever they may be, but having a few essential ones, and then really working with them, right? Really working with them. So maybe I think this would be really the best situation, I think this would be the best solution. Yeah. Thank you. And then with your question, then yes. So guru reliance, the mind that relies on the guru, or the mind that wishes to rely on a guru, is of course a positive mind, right? It is of course a valid mind. Okay. And then the second issue you raised between guru devotion and guru attachment. Maybe this could be a good term, guru attachment. So between these two, being devoted to one's guru and then being attached to one's guru. For most of us, including myself, then being devoted to something and being attached to something, these two things are very, very difficult to differentiate, Because when we are devoted to something, we usually find it pleasant, We are not devoted to doing unpleasant things, right? None of us are. We are only devoted to pleasant objects. We like pleasant objects, and we like to devote our time to be with pleasant objects, right? With pleasantness. And seeing things in a pleasant way, is that not attachment, right? There's always that question, when we see when we start to see things in a pleasant way, aren't we already in the boundary of attachment? Aren't we entering attachment the moment we see something as being pleasant? The moment we project this pleasantness onto the object, isn't that attachment, right? So there's that question, that lingering doubt, right? So this is, I think, in a way, it can be philosophical, but here, what I find useful personally is that I think with attachment and devotion, perhaps I feel that if the emphasis is really on you, then this is attachment. If the emphasis is on the guru, then this is devotion, right? So if we are not careful, then in our guru devotion, right, in praising our guru, we might end up praising ourselves, you know. In that process, we might end up praising ourselves. So we have to be, again, very careful. We have to be very careful. I heard this story, you know, of one of the most, I think, creative intellect, you know, from the 20th century Tibet, yeah? I'm sure many of you are familiar with this name, Gaden Shartse, you know, Gaden Shartse, yeah? So, Amdo Gaden Shartse, as is known, or just simply Gaden Shartse, or even Gen Gaden Shartse, yes, he was known for his questions. He was known for he studied the Buddhist texts. He had a very good background in Buddhist philosophy, also in Buddhist philosophy, and also the poetry. And I think he came to India, and also I think Sri Lanka, right? Sri Lanka. So he also wrote he authored many books on pilgrimage sites, among many different genres. So he was really he's well-read, well-traveled, and a great intellect. So anyhow, to get to the point, I heard that he would say it like this, you know, that he said to someone, he asked this person, how do you know that Buddha Shakyamuni, that the Buddha Shakyamuni is a great being? You know, how do you know that? Then that person replied, oh, because the great Je Tsongkhapa said so, you know. And then he asked, well, how do you know that Je Tsongkhapa is a great being? Oh, then he said, he also gave the name of some other lamas, you know, down the lineage. And then he said, well, how do you know so-and-so is correct? How do you know that that person is correct? And then this person said, well, because he's my lama. Because he's my lama, therefore he is correct. You know? So you can see, you know, how Gaden Shartse, you know, dissects this argument. And this person, for him, Buddha Shakyamuni and Je Tsongkhapa are great beings because his personal teacher said it like that, and how can he be sure that his teacher is correct? Well, that is because it's his teacher, right? So you can see how some people might think. This way of thinking is with this kind of thinking, then this might be, I think, it's not very useful. It's not very useful. So we have to not think like that. Not think like that. Not use self-referential reasoning in that process, and try to not emphasize oneself. If you do that, then there's the likelihood that you will then go into attachment. That you will then go into attachment and then get stuck there, right? It's very interesting still how we use the word I, me, my, right? And how we attach them to our gurus, yeah? So it's something that we have to unlearn, right? We have to unlearn using these words and then really holding dearly onto me, right? Onto I, onto myself, right? And if we can get them out of our devotion to our gurus, then this is, I think, pure guru devotion. Otherwise, our guru devotion is somehow mixed with attachment for our gurus, attachment to our gurus. Of course, we are not perfect. We beginners, as Kyabje Rinpoche says, we beginners, right? So this is, we just need to be aware of that. This is important, because sometimes in that process of referring to oneself, sometimes, there's a tendency that we sometimes become lost in that sea of words, right? We've just become so absorbed into those concepts, into this concept of me, the self-grasping mind, what we call the self-grasping mind, right? So you're right. It's very difficult to differentiate. Philosophically differentiating, like I did, it's easy. Anyone can do that. But really, in practice, how do we make sure that we do not mix our devotion from our attachment? So this is something again that we have to be aware of, and then not just be aware of it in general sense, but try to find that moment when we are mixing these two together, when we are mixing our faith with our attachment, right? So doing this kind of experiments, when you are alone or when you're with someone, I think it's good. And of course we will talk about it more, in the coming weekend. Mindfulness, again, mindfulness. So being mindful of our speech, when among others, being mindful, guarding our speech, and then when you're by yourself, then guarding your mind, watching your mind. So this is what I think we have to try to practice. Try to practice. So thank you. And now the third.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for
Yes.
your teaching. I have two questions. The first one is, I need your explanation on stanza 22.
Mhm.
Yeah, and also based on this stanza, can I just ask, for the Vajra holders, does it referring to the Vajradhara? Because for most of us, we are just practicing on the Mahayana path.
Mhm.
So when you talk about guru devotions,
Mhm.
how is it possible for us to to have this to view our guru as a Vajradhara?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel, not only feel, but this is the reality now, at least conventionally. It's that if you haven't received any tantric teachings from the spiritual guru, then it is not. Then you don't have to view the spiritual guru, as Vajradhara. You don't have to, right? You don't have to, As I think you mentioned Mahayana, right? So when you say Mahayana, then I think this is non-tantric Mahayana. I think that's what you're referring to. So on that stage, then So this 50 stanzas, I think, is very. It's really a tantric, tantric teaching, right? It's a tantric instruction. It's related with tantra. So on that level, then to view the guru simply as, I think it's really up to you, whether to view the guru as simply a guide, or as part of the Sangha, or as an emanation of Buddha, because now we are in non-tantric Mahayana level. I think that is also, we also have the room for that, right? So it's really up to you, and absolutely not necessary to go literally with each of these verses. That is not necessary, because this is only in the context of Tantra in general, and I think specifically highest yoga Tantra, right? So, thank you.
My second question is, do you need a formality to establish a guru-disciple relationship? For example, if you see the person as your guru, do you need the other person to acknowledge you as the disciples, or is there any formality?
Yes. I think I can just imagine these cases where one person might see a teacher, and then the moment one sees this teacher, then thinks, aha, this is it. This is my guru. You can feel like that. There are stories like that, right? So if you are in that situation, this is good, this is a good thing, then don't simply stop there. We have to then get to know the person, right? Because there is this feel-good factor there. This is the basis. On that, then one can work, Then we can work on that. Of course, without having this, without having, the first impression, without having a good first impression, then one might not feel to really investigate this person, right? So having had this good impression, then we should try to find more about the person through various means, right? Through various means, and then approach the person. And as we say, the guru is our guide to enlightenment, right? Then I think it would be a good thing to have this relationship based on exchange of, yeah. So when it's important to establish like a verbal connection there, right? So through the Dharma, a Dharmic connection, I think is important. But sometimes I think depending on various causes and conditions, sometimes I don't think it's even necessary to actually receive any verbal teachings from the guru. Simply by being in the presence of one guru can give you that, can inspire you, can ripen certain karmas there, right? So it's, the possibilities are infinite, right? It's not like it's not so clear cut, but it's really it's a case by case. Yeah, we have to go case by case, right? And again, whatever that I might have said yesterday and today, again, I want to remind, don't take that for the truth. Don't take that for the truth. These are just my opinions. Okay? And they're not even, what's that word? It's not even like a professional guess. It's not even that. It's not even like a professional opinion. It's just an opinion that comes out of the blue, out of nowhere, maybe, maybe just from this exchange, it just dawns in my mind, and I just say things. So here, perhaps I can take some comfort in the fact that Buddha himself said that, told his disciples to take his words, to not take his words simply, to not take his words as the truth simply because he said so, but the disciples, the hearers, should analyze the words, and out of this analysis, if the teaching seems sound and reasonable, then you may accept that, right? So like that. So yeah.
Dear Rinpoche, earlier you said that if one found the guru is inappropriate or abusive, and one should raise the concern, but to whom this concern should be raised to? If this Lama has reputable and no scandal in their whole life.
Could you please? Yes. Oh, I see. Now I get it. Yes. So when we find ourselves in this situation where the spiritual guru prior to this day hasn't had any negative reviews, but unfortunately you witness at first hand, something really, really inappropriate, right? So then where do we, and your question was, to whom do we raise our concern? I think, the first thing is that we have to make sure, we have to think about the situation, and we have to be very sure that this is 100%, that it was 100%, that it was definitely inappropriate, right? And then when we are very sure of that, if we are absolutely sure of that, then we should first, I think, we have to raise our concern among our friends, among our friends. I think this is important. And then, to something like, we have to know about, of course now we know where this Lama comes from, right? Which tradition is this Lama from? Which monastery does this Lama come from? So we have to contact, right? We have to contact, and we can send letters to the monasteries, right? And to the head of those traditions. They have to be informed. I think this is important. Yeah, they need to be informed, right? And then I think the internet, for example, is a platform, where you can then tell of your experience, tell and warn others, right? But again, that has to depend on how comfortable you feel with that, right? So like this, I think. But dealing with this kind of controversies, sometimes then again, if we have this system where if there is a complaint and immediately this complaint is registered and is taken for the truth, then just imagine how this system can be manipulated, how this system can be again misused. So we have to, I think, really develop a system, we have to, at least we have to in the military there is something called, is it the tribunal, right? The tribune, court martial, tribunal. Yeah. So I think this would be good, that if there are more complaints, and all of these complaints seem to have a certain level of authenticity, then the relevant person should be dealt with by the religious authorities, and simply they shouldn't be ignored, Of course, these kind of things, can we really, is there evidence? I think for most of these situations there are no evidence, right? So it is difficult to really come to a point, right? How can we say that such and such has indeed really abused because so and so said so, right? So it's this word against that word, right? And we are the third person. So this is, I think, what makes it very difficult. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean that if it had really happened to you, that does not mean that you stay silent. Of course not. You have to do everything you can to let others know. This, I feel, is important, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Oh. And then one thing came in my mind. One thing came in mind. This makes it easier. I think from those movies, we can get ideas. Yeah. This is where we have to use again movies, you know. So if there is such a person, you know, in robes, has name and is abusing, then it might be good to catch that person with evidence. Yeah? Yes. So this kind of thing should be done, you know, to really get down and make things clear. Because what I was suggesting earlier, with that we will never come to any conclusion, you know, because it's just one word against the other word, right? But if there is such a person who is really abusing his or her, I mean, so far we have never heard of a female spiritual guide abusing disciples, right? So far, no. So here, in this context, then we have to really, you know, bring evidence against him, you know, against him. So this kind of thing, yes, I think, then this will make things clear, you know. Yeah. So please.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for all the kind teaching, and thank you to manifest in our mind stream, and please be with us until we attain perfect enlightenment. I have two questions. The first question, I was thinking, in the intense search for a guru, in the intense of searching for gurus, whilst we are searching for gurus,
intention to search for gurus.
Not only from the search from the guru aspect, but we ourselves also play a very vital part. Gurus, being a Buddhas, is always around. Gurus will get close to us, and I'm not sure this thinking is correct now. Guru will come to us and get closer to us whenever we are ready. So we play a vital part that while searching for gurus, we need to continue to practice Dharma as intense as possible, and meanwhile, as per what Lamrim has been taught, intense donation as much as possible, which also accumulate a lot of aspect of the merits.
Mm-hmm.
When time is right, Guru will appear, and then the relationship will start to re-establish again. So this is my first question. Is this thinking correct?
Yes. I was a little lost. You mentioned, okay, so did I understand your question as if we practice the Dharma, then if we accumulate enough merit, then the Guru will come to us.
Yes,
right?
To a certain extent. When the time has matured, then Guru will reappear and become clearer to us more directly in the conventional way.
You mean like we will meet our Guru, right?
We will meet our Guru.
Okay. Okay. Yes. I agree. Yeah. But it can also be the other way. We first meet our Guru, and then the Guru teaches us Lamrim. Guru teaches us the path, and then we follow those teachings and then engage in the accumulation of merit and wisdom, right? It can also be the other way around, right? So there is really no definite rule there. There's no sequence there, yeah? And
second question is that what is the essential elements to have the disciple and guru relationship to be gelled together and strengthened stronger and stronger?
This is, I think, the pure mind. Pure mind, yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Pure mind. This is important. Yeah. Yeah. This is to strengthen, yeah. To gel, yeah. To bring one closer to the Guru. Yeah. I think pure mind. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And please. Yes, please.
宁波车啊，我讲华语哈，不会讲英语我要问说，一指三知识有什么利益？然后，假如说不依止有什么过患请你跟我讲。
Rinpoche, her question is that what's the advantage of relying on a spiritual friend, and then what's the disadvantage of not relying on a virtuous friend? Thank you.
The advantages of relying on the right spiritual guide, I think, is many. I think the first is by relying on a teacher, then one would not only learn how to practice, but one will gain the wisdom of how to practice, right? Because nowadays, I think, without, some people may think, well, you don't have to rely on a spiritual guide. These days you can read books, go on the internet, etc. like that. Yes, that is true. By reading books, you can gain a certain understanding. That is true. But without relying on a spiritual guide, then you cannot develop realizations. You cannot have realizations, right? You can only have an understanding. You can only have the theory. You may know the theory, but you won't have any realizations. So this is, I think, the biggest advantage, the main advantage. The main advantage of relying on the right spiritual guide is that this is the culmination of establishing, of relying on the Guru, that you will then have realizations, right? You will have wisdom. And then the disadvantages is then, you won't, right? Is that you won't get realizations. Yeah, you might get some theory, but no realizations. And also, I think if you simply read a book, read something on the internet, I don't think you can truly be inspired. For really being inspired, for truly being inspired, I think you have to look to a person. You have to follow a person's example, right? Simply just looking at words, you cannot. Of course, if that book is talking about a person, of course you can be inspired, but in a way, then you are going to this person, right? But without relying on a person, and if it is just words and that just explanatory words and books and just information on the internet, simply relying on those will not result in realizations. And even, I think, something like just even in order to develop compassion, one has to rely on sentient beings. So when we think I don't have to rely on a guru, then I feel this is quite egotistic. It may be egotistic. So if you think like this, then how can you develop compassion? Because you have to rely on others in order to have compassion. So if that is the case, if you have to rely on others in order to have compassion, then you also have to rely on others to gain realizations, right? So with this, if you think like this, then relying on a spiritual guide, then it starts to make sense, right? It starts to make sense. So like this. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Rinpoche, I have a question. Reference your earlier explanations on Buddha's teaching and encouraging the disciple to so-called question his teaching, to investigate all that. My question here is this. I've been asking this question many times, about at least 2 or 3 times. Because of our ignorant mind, our ignorant nature, and lacking of wisdom, and especially we have very strong self-challenging mind. When we start to investigate, sometimes we end up with certain perception of things, and we skip the investigations and the answer towards what I think is right. So that is where the danger, when I think about this investigation, become dangerous. So what is your advice for us when it comes to practice and to be investigative in nature and all, so that we have strong faith and we also don't go in the wrong directions?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's very dangerous, but I always realize that.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So here, then, one must first study Dharma. One must study Dharma. You must study the Dharma, not simply, have faith in the 3 jewels, not simply have faith in the teachings, but study the great teachings, study Dharma. We have to study Dharma. And of course, I think many of us, those of us who have a job to do, then it's you don't have the luxury of spending hours and hours, devoting hours and hours on studying the texts, right? So then here, then we really have to, what we call time management, the little time that we find, then really use that well, and really first, when I say study the Dharma, don't think of what we call the 84,000 volumes, don't think of that, this is too much, right? But just very simple. Just begin with the 4 Noble Truths. Try to first understand suffering, what is suffering? And you could really spend so many weekends on suffering, on contemplating suffering, on trying to understand what suffering really is, and so like this is what I meant. So with this, studying just the essential points is enough. With that background, having a firm background on the essential teachings, you can use that, and then if you see something that goes against those fundamentals, then you can leave that out, right? And if there's something that accords with those fundamental teachings, fundamental concepts, fundamental ideas of the Dharma, if those teachings, if the teachings accord with those, then you can accept, right? So we really have to find the right thing for our time, you know, something that we can manage, you know. So I think like this, but there is no one even here, I think, who won't even have the time to think about suffering, right? So we can definitely, we all have time for that, don't we? You know, we all have time to think about suffering, right? So like this, then gradually, then we tried, you know, first the very basic thing, then study, get a good understanding of the Four Noble Truths. You know, there's a reason why the Buddha shared that, just those four, in his first sharing, in his first sermon, right? So if you get the basics right, then you're good, you know. Then it doesn't matter what situation you're faced, that you find yourself in, you will always have a reference point. You will always have something to hold on to, right? So really, we have to always go back to the Four Noble Truths and use that as our anchor, you know. In Singapore, you have so many boats, right? You have so many ships, and they all, and when they stop moving, they have to use the anchor, right? So the Four Noble Truths, this is our anchor. Yeah. So with that, I think, one more, please. One more.
Upstairs,
Okay.
actually two more, Rinpoche.
Okay, two more. Okay, we will do two.
Upstairs. Dilip?
Hi, Rinpoche, thank you. My first question is pertaining to your earlier explanation that it's only through reliance on Guru that we can gain realization, and just reading the textbook is not sufficient. I personally subscribe to that, but then I just seek a little clarification, because if we look at the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, historical means conventional looking, how we see him. His teachers are, you know, their attainments are actually less, they are not Buddhas. Actually, Buddha Shakyamuni's teachers are not, they don't attain Buddhahood. The most they get is a peak of existence. So it seems that Buddha Shakyamuni doesn't have a reliance on another Buddha, you see. So how do we explain that in other contexts? You know, explain this kind of situation if anybody asks us. Then secondly, right, I was so interested to know what is the exact mechanics why only through reliance on the teacher or devotion to Guru that our mind will gain the realization, where else, you know, we relying on some manuals or some book or just reading a Lamrim, we will not gain realization. Because I do have friends or people I met who sort of do DIY, they just want to study their own and they're quite reluctant to find a Guru. So perhaps this would be useful to tell them, you know, why only through you know, relying on teacher that our mind can actually open to realization.
Oh, thank you. Just out of curiosity, did you ask question yesterday? I think the first, was it the first one?
Rinpoche, you're right. I asked you a question yesterday.
Okay.
Thank you.
And like yesterday, also two questions tonight. Yes. Yes.
Very
nice. Thank you. This is a very good question. I can remember the second question. Let me think about the first question. What was the first question? Can you just give me that? Oh, right. Yes. So, okay, I will try to address the first question. Yes. As you know, with our Mahayana background, we explain that the historical Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, has already become a Buddha. Is already a Buddha. You know, at the time when he was born, already a Buddha, right? He has been Buddha before, and before that he was, you know, of course, Buddhahood in Sambhogakaya, in the form realm, so not in the desire realm, not in the world as we know. I think so like this, and then Nirmanakaya in Tushita, right? And then here, what we say, Chogtul, which is something like the supreme Nirmanakaya. I'll just use that term. Displaying the 12 deeds, right? The 12 deeds. So this is how it is explained. So therefore, because Prince Siddhartha has already become enlightened, maybe, and was only displaying those deeds, was only showing us. Those were just manifestations, right? This is the classic answer that we find in the Mahayana texts. And I am aware, not aware, but I have heard, as you had mentioned, about also the Buddha's teachers, how I think he first relied on, of course, obviously non-Buddhist, teachers from non-Buddhist traditions. But later, the Buddha felt dissatisfied even with their teachings. He felt this was somewhat limited, the scope, it was limited, right? He wasn't fully satisfied with that teaching, right? And then, I think the 6 years of hardship starts. So simply by learning, it's not enough. One has to go through the hardships. And then, I think if we follow that narrative, where the Buddha is actually born as a mere prince, not yet an enlightened being, if we follow that narrative, then it is that in all these hardships, then the Buddha came to know of the selfless, that there is no self, comes to the conclusion that there is no self, right? And with this knowledge, with this realization of selflessness, then the Buddha attains enlightenment on that basis, right? This is one. Also, with this narrative, then even though the Buddha, being born to King Suddhodana as just this prince, even on that level, it is said that, now this is of course not Mahayana, it is said that the Buddha had already achieved the path of accumulation, so not yet an Arya being, when he was born as what is Sosokyo? What is that word? You have Arya being and then, non-Arya being. That's so easy, right? Non-Arya being, born as a non-Arya being, but still, nevertheless, a path the Buddha was already on the path, even in his previous lives, already on the path of accumulation. So, on those paths, yes, there were many times when the Buddha had a spiritual guide and relied on those spiritual guides, right? So this is, I think, one thing. And this might go with the second part of your question, relying on a spiritual guide. Is it absolutely necessary? This is, again, when I first said that we must rely on a spiritual guide, first we have to see for ourselves what kind of a person we are, right? Now, if in our previous lives we have made all those karmas that we have had had the good fortune of establishing this wonderful relationship with the correct, with the right, with the wise and compassionate spiritual guide. And we have gone through many that we have really gone through many of the hardships that we have practiced for many times, for many years, for many lifetimes, and have really made a firm karmic imprint. Then of course it is possible that being born in this life, that you are perhaps born in this modern society without any spiritual guides in close proximity, and then one day there is this interest in the Dharma, and you come across some books and you read those books and you could get a realization. I think this is possible, right? So, but then how do you know whether you are this special person, right? How do you know? How do you know, right? So just to be on the safe side, so the norm is, yes, rely on a spiritual guide. And if you can gain realizations without having to rely on a spiritual guide, you are an exception, right? You are an exceptional person. So, like this. Okay. Thank you.
Rinpoche, thank you for your teaching.
Please.
One question from me. I'm sure many here, including myself, want you to be our guru, or perhaps some waiting for you to see whether you are the right guru for them. So, but as a guru, do you have any expectation for your students? And in relation to guru devotion, likewise, do you have any expectation that you want your students to demonstrate? Yeah, that's my question. Thanks.
And you're asking this question to someone who has no students. Right?
No, because we are very conventional people. So,
okay. All right, so let us agree to this. Let us set this premise. You are all here as my students, and I'm here as your guru. This is a big if. No, please. This is not the time for clapping. No. I'm not finished. So this is a hypothetical situation, and we don't need to clap to a hypothetical situations, right? Or else that would be like hypothetical clapping. I don't know, but yes. Okay, so I can give a general answer. Yes, of course, the spiritual guide has expectations from the student. Definitely. The expectation, I think, for example, I can answer it like this. What does our spiritual guide expect from us, right? I think as the great teacher, the Buddha said that all teachings that he gives is for the sake of the listener, is for the benefit of the listener, right? I think I might have to rephrase. What I meant to say was that as it is mentioned in the Lojong that all teachings of the Buddha converges on a single point. Yeah? That all teachings of the Buddha converges on a single point. And what is this point? This is so that we can be free from suffering, right? That we can be free, that we can free ourselves from the roots of suffering, right? So I think this is the expectation from our gurus, is that they expect us to try to free. They want to see us at least try, to free ourselves from the source of our sufferings. I think this is what they expect from us. So we have to, this is what they expect. Yeah. That is right. Yeah. So thank you.